Muhteşem Yüzyıl, English, The Magnificent Century, is a prime-time historical Turkish soap opera television series. It was originally broadcast on Show TV and then transferred to Star TV. It is based on the life of Ottoman Sultan Süleyman the Magnificent, the longest-reigning sultan of the Ottoman Empire, and his wife Hürrem Sultan, a slave girl who became Sultana at age of 26. When his reign began, Sultan Süleyman sought to build an empire more powerful than Alexander the Great and to render the Ottomans invincible. Throughout his 46-year reign, his fame as both the greatest warrior and ruler of his age spread both east and west. With his companion Pargalı Ibrahim, Suleiman achieved great victories. Suleiman called Ibrahim his brother, friend and advisor. The television series shows Suleiman's consolidation of his power, Pargalı Ibrahim being vazir of state, reinforcing the rule of law throughout the empire, meeting foreign diplomats, and preparing for military campaigns, all set against the backdrop of the tension between Christian Europe and the Ottoman Empire. The series also focuses on the relationships among the members of the imperial household, especially romantic entanglements and rivalries. The animosity between Hürrem Sultan and Muhteşem Sultan, mother of the Sultan's eldest son, and the role of Hafsa Sultan, the Valide Sultan, Hürrem's rise as Suleiman's favorite while pregnant with his son, her fall from favor after her son's birth and her eventual return to grace, Pargalı Ibrahim's entanglement with Hafsa Sultan, the Sultan's sister, and many others. Season 1. Meanwhile, the daughter of a Ukrainian priest, Alexandra, later Hürrem Sultan, is captured during a Tatar slave raid on her village. Her father, mother, and sister are killed in the raid, but her fiancé Leo survives and escapes, although she thinks he also died. Her best friend Maria, later Gulnel, is taken in the same ship. When Alexandra, Hürrem, arrives, she is taught a lesson: if she becomes a favorite Hatun and gives birth to a son, she could rise to become a sultana and rule the world. So, to attract his attention, when the Sultan next passes by and all concubines, slaves bow in respect, she calls out his name and then faints into his arms. The next day some slaves are chosen to get Suleiman's attention. They are told that whoever gets it will be given a purple piece of cloth by the Sultan. She becomes the favorite, and the Sultan names her Hürrem. Later she converts to Islam. Muhteşem, senior Hatun and mother of the Sultan's surviving son, Said Mustafa, becomes obsessively jealous of Hürrem. Blaming Hürrem for her own miscarriage, Muhteşem beats her up badly. When Suleiman finds out, Muhteşem falls even further from his favor. During Suleiman's campaign against Belgrade, recently married Victoria's husband is killed during their escape. Victoria, later Sadıka, goes to Constantinople to take revenge. Hürrem becomes pregnant with their first son, Said Mehmed. Suleiman calls her to his chambers to eat sweetmeats, but these have been poisoned by Muhteşem. Hürrem eats the sweets and passes out, but Suleiman manages to rescue her. Suleiman's displeasure with Muhteşem increases. Hürrem becomes pregnant with Suleiman's and her first and only daughter, Muhteşem Sultan. After giving birth she gives a party in the harem, but then gets in a fight with another favorite, Hatun, and threatens to kill her. Sadıka kills because suspects she is up to something, but because Hürrem threatened her and all evidence seems to prove that Hürrem killed her, Suleiman banishes her to the old palace. Ibrahim tells Hürrem that she can come back to the Topkapı palace if she agrees to says sorry to Muhteşem. Initially Hürrem refuses, but then changes her mind. Hafsa Sultan, Sultan Suleiman's sister, falls in love with Ibrahim, Sultan's best friend. Ibrahim is made the Grand Vizier of the Ottoman Empire. Ibrahim Pasha is married to Hafsa Sultan. After that, Hürrem gives birth to a boy Said Selim and Sultan goes with her on a trip in the forest. Selim remains with Gulnel. Then Suleiman goes hunting with Mustafa, Hürrem and Mehmed, but he doesn't take Muhteşem. Hafsa is pregnant. Meanwhile there's a civil war and during that she loses her child. Leo, Hürrem's former fiancé, finds out where Hürrem is and becomes the royal painter to get close to her. Ibrahim Pasha discovers the truth about their relationship. He tells Hürrem that unless she feeds Leo poisoned Turkish delights, he will tell the Sultan about Leo himself. Suleiman is in a pavilion outside Ibrahim Pasha's palace, enjoying the view and eating grapes with Sadika serving him. Sadika is seen bringing a tray with a glass of almond juice, but with a dagger concealed beneath it. Hürrem cries as she feeds Leo the poisoned Turkish delights. Suleiman is threatened with a dagger at his throat. Season 2. Before Sadka was able to kill Suleiman, he manages to disarm her and she is sentenced to prison. Later she is killed by Matrax, who is found guilty for helping her to post messages, and killing Sadika is his punishment. Hürrem gives birth to another boy, Said Bayezid. Spanish Princess Isabella and her servant are kidnapped by Turkish pirates and sold to Suleiman. They live in isolation in forest in a hunting lodge. Suleiman wants to use them as an advantage when he bargains with European sovereigns. Isabella wants to escape, and when she fails several times, Hürrem is jealous and threatens Isabella. Eventually she helps her to escape, but the princess is stopped by Ibrahim. Isabella falls in love with Suleiman. She moves into the harem and becomes Suleiman's favorite. Hürrem, with the help of Gul, Nagar and Nilufar, succeed in sending her into Vienna, where she had resorting to the monastery. Meanwhile Bali Bey falls in love with a Jewish girl called Arman. The relationship is against the will of Arman's father and he makes her leave the city. When she returns, she is gravely ill. Bali Bey eventually marries her with the blessing of her father, and next day she dies. Hattus gives birth to a boy, but she accidentally kills him. She leaves her palace and goes to Edirne in order to recover. Meanwhile, Ibrahim once sleeps with Nagar and then he sends her to Topkapi Palace. After some time, Ibrahim leaves for war and Hattus calls Nagar back to her palace. Nagar is in love with Ibrahim. When Ibrahim comes back, Nagar tries to commit suicide, but Ibrahim saves her. Hattus becomes pregnant with twins. Mahidevran gives the Valide Sultan Leo's diary about Hürrem, which Gulsa picked up after Hürrem threw it out of window in a desperate attempt to get rid of it. The Valide calls Hürrem to her chambers, but then the Valide faints. Hürrem calls for help and then she attempts to take the diary. Day notices it and takes it before Hürrem can. She later gives it to the Valide Sultan and she uses it to make Hürrem Sultan leave. To save herself, Hürrem offers an estate to Day, which she eventually accepts, and in exchange Day gives the diary to Hürrem. When the Valide comes to Hürrem's chambers, Hürrem throws the diary into fire, destroying the only evidence of her and Leo's possible affair. Hürrem tells Suleiman that she cannot make charity because she is a slave. Suleiman frees her, and when he goes to her room for a night, she tells him that she cannot share a bed with him because she is a free woman and her religion forbids her from sharing a bed with a man if she is not married. Suleiman thinks that she did the drama of the charity because she wants to marry him. She is sent to another palace under the orders of the Sultan, and the Valide Sultan sets a trap for her. She puts some attackers to kill Hürrem, but Bali Bey saves her. She is back to Topkapi Palace and the Sultan decides to marry her. After marrying Hürrem Sultan Suleiman comes to give the Valide Sultan the news of his action. But when Hürrem Sultan tries to kiss her hand, she stands up and shows displeasure with his deed, which she considers unacceptable. The Valide faints in the Sultan's arms and they take her to her chambers to rest. Ibrahim is shot during the ceremony with an arrow and it turns out that it was poisoned. Hürrem is afraid that they would blame her for this because she did send an archer to kill Ibrahim, but she called off the attack at the last minute when she saw Hattus was upset. Ibrahim's attacker was another archer sent by one of the viziers to kill him. The arrow is poisoned and Ibrahim becomes seriously ill. Nagar, Matrax and Sumbul travel to heal Ibrahim in one of the hot springs. Hattus is worried because she thinks that Ibrahim will die. Furious, Mahidevran comes to Suleiman's door and asks his guardian to announce her, but Suleiman refuses to receive her, arguing that he is busy. She requests her freedom to spend her life as a free woman, which Suleiman denies. She then asks him to send her to exile with her son, as happens when princes become of age, but he tells her she can leave, but his son stays with him. Mustafa convinces his father to send them both to Edirne Palace. At the Valide Sultan's initiative, her niece Baig comes to Topkapi Palace from Crimea, to be protected from the succession infighting between the Valides brothers upon the death of their father. the Crimean ruler. They tell Beg to stay away from Hürrem because she could be a bad influence on her, but she is stubborn and Hürrem is known all the way to her homeland, so she decides to be friends with her. She falls in love with Bali Bey during this season as he is the one in charge of security of the entire royal family. Ibrahim falls in love with Nagar because she took care of him during his illness. Nagar Hatun is married to Matrax Nasiu Effendi on initiative of Hattus and the Valide Sultan. Nagar is not pleased by her wedding because she is in love with Ibrahim, the Grand Vizier. On her first night in her new house, she is surprised to see Ibrahim entering and he tells her that he and Matrax had a deal and that he is the one she will be with from now on. Nagar is happy at this turn of events. Meanwhile, Hattus gives birth to twins, one boy and one girl, Osman and Hurasain, and Ibrahim is happy to see her holding both babies in her hands and also surprised. Nagar is not pleased by this. Time passed and at the age of 17, Mustafa comes back to Topkapi to be with his father until he is sent into exile. While the Sultan is away at war, the Valide Sultan and Mahidevran conspire against Hürrem. The Valide Sultan places a spy and pretends to let Hürrem lead the harem for a while. During the rebellion provoked by the Valide spy, Fatma, one of the slaves, is accused of stealing gold and the innocent girl burns herself. The slaves take torches and march towards Hürrem's chambers and try to burn her, but Day and the guardians save her. Day gets fired for this. When Sultan comes back and finds out what happened, he gives the Valide Sultan a lecture about how she is not capable of leading the harem and he is tired of all the fights. He is also angry with Ibrahim because he didn't give him Hürrem's letter while they were in the war. But Ibrahim says that he didn't want to worry him and that he has given orders to Day and Nagar to protect Hürrem ever since Sultan made him responsible for her life. Sultan gives Day back her post. Hürrem and Mahidevran fight after Gulsa gets Day's position and Mahidevran tries to slap her. Suleiman arrives and makes her apologize, after which she goes crying to her chambers. Mustafa barges into Hürrem's chambers to talk to his father and they have a huge discussion about the way Hürrem manipulates him, after which Suleiman tries to invite Mustafa to his chambers which he refuses. Mustafa almost loses his father's support when he doesn't want to come to Hagia Sophia with him. But Ibrahim manages to make him see reason. Hürrem gets into a fight with Mustafa, and Suleiman gives Mustafa his place. Hürrem is displeased so they have an argument. Mustafa falls in love with a concubine named Nora, later Efsun, and she gets pregnant. Mustafa doesn't know that Efsun works for Hürrem Sultan and has orders to poison him. She puts poison in his food, but at the last moment she regrets and trips over the food. Mustafa gets sick, and Mahidevran concludes that it was all Hürrem's doing. Even though Mustafa didn't drink the poison, he gave it to Ahmad the Courageous only for him to kill himself for the prince and the country. Fatma Hatun blames Efsun for working for Hürrem, so Mahidevran asks her to tell her a secret about Hürrem. Efsun asks Hürrem if she has another plan. Hürrem asks Efsun to tell Mahidevran about Beg and Bali Bey's affair so that Mustafa and Mahidevran get hurt. When Beg leaves to go back to her homeland with Bali Bey, Hürrem sends another message using Efsun that both of them are running away and they shall never come back. Mahidevran tells Suleiman about them, who sends ships after them to bring them back. Sahangir, Hürrem's youngest son, gets sick, and she doesn't tell Suleiman, which infuriates him. But after seeing his son so sick, he and Hürrem unite and he calls a doctor. Sahangir is developing a hump and they try to fix it by physiotherapy while he is still a baby. Saiganur gets better even though he can't recover fully and Suleiman has a heart attack. Mahidevran is conscious that when Suleiman dies, her son would be the Sultan, so she tries to convince Mustafa that he needs to take precautions with his brothers, which he refuses. She then talks with Ibrahim. The Valide Sultan hears this and sends Hürrem and her children to Hattus's Saray to protect them. When Suleiman wakes up, Mahidevran falls even more from grace. Meanwhile, Bali Bey and Beg are brought back from the sea and Bali Bey tells the truth to Suleiman in front of Mustafa and Ibrahim. Suleiman asks Mustafa to decide Bali Bey's fate. First, Mustafa announces Bali's death, but on the day of punishment he forgives him. Bali Bey resigns and returns to his homeland. Beg also returns to Crimean. her homeland. Mahidevran finds out that Efsun is pregnant and wants to make her abort, but Mustafa stops her and sends Efsun to his chambers. Hürrem tells the Valide about Efsun's pregnancy and the Valide sends Date to get rid of the baby. Mustafa doesn't manage to save her this time, and baby and Efsun die. But before her death she warns Mustafa to stay away from Hürrem as Hürrem tried to poison her. Mahidevran tells this to Suleiman, who offers poison to her. As Hürrem shows no reluctance in drinking the poison, Suleiman believes that she is innocent. She survives as Suleiman was just testing her with a medicine. Nigar gets pregnant with Ibrahim's baby. Gulsa intrigued against Day, which caused Date to kill a healer by accident, so they fired her and threw her out of harem. Mahidevran is happy because she thinks Gulsa will get the post again, but is surprised to hear the Valide giving the post to Nigar. Then Valide finds out about Ibrahim's affair with Nigar Hatun, because Idris Aga followed Ibrahim Pasha and told all the relation between Ibrahim and Nigar to the Valide Sultan. That's why she wants to fire her. She comes to Suleiman's chambers to inform him, but suffers a stroke before saying anything. She eventually passes away and Mahidevran rules the harem, which she immediately uses in her favor to get the Valide's chambers, which Suleiman doesn't allow. She also buys many unnecessary things and exceeds the budget, and she has to take a loan from a Jewish loan shark. Gulfam is given Day's former post. Hürrem wants to get rid of Mahidevran and Mustafa. Mustafa is set on leave to the province of Manisa, but Ibrahim convinces Suleiman to let Mahidevran stay in the harem. Hürrem, with Gul's help, makes a plan that would convict Mahidevran of trying to murder the Valide. However, Nigar witnesses Gul's action and tells Ibrahim. Gul is fired for it and leaves the saray. Gulsa tries to get rid of Mahidevran's maid Fatma, but it all turns against her. She is fired and Mahidevran wants her to marry. Desperate, Gulsa wants to be Hürrem's servant, but Hürrem sends her away and tells her that she would have no profit from Gulsa being her maid. Gulsa later overhears a conversation between Ibrahim and Nigar about Nigar's pregnancy. She accidentally breaks a vase and Ibrahim and Nigar realize that someone heard them. Gulsa wants to tell Hürrem what she found out, but Hürrem isn't in her chamber and Gulsa is driven out of the saray before Hürrem's return. Nigar later realizes that it was Gulsa who overheard her and she tells Ibrahim. Ibrahim orders Gulsa to be killed and she is stabbed several times and left in the wilderness to die. However, she survives and tells Hürrem about Nigar's pregnancy and eventually becomes Hürrem's maid. After the Valide's death, Day leaves the saray. She gives all her property to charity and works as a servant of a wealthy woman. Hürrem wants to help her, but Day refuses. Eventually Day commits suicide. Nigar is supposed to leave the saray and go to Ibrahim's brother. Hürrem kidnaps her during the journey and hides her. Gulsa takes care of Nigar. Hürrem sends a message to Hadis that Ibrahim is unfaithful and reveals the whereabouts of Nigar. Nigar successfully escapes, but Hadis arrives and stops her. She arrests her, but Nigar says that the father of her baby is Matrax. Matrax confirms it. Hadis confronts Hürrem, who sends for Gulsa, who witnessed Nigar and Ibrahim. Hadis later confronts Ibrahim, who admits cheating and being the father of Nigar's baby. Hürrem intrigues against Mahidevran, making her look like someone who wanted to strangle Gulfam. Suleiman gives Hürrem the leadership of the harem and the season ends with everybody bowing to her and Mahidevran looking at her angrily. Season 3. After Ibrahim's affair with Nigar becomes known, Ibrahim leaves the city on a campaign against Persia. After his return he manages to rescue his relationship to Hadis Sultan. Hadis orders Nigar's beheading, but Hürrem manages to save her life through Rustam Aga, who was a trusted man of Skender Çelebi and now serves Hürrem Sultan. Nigar Kalfa gives birth to a child, but Hadis hides the child from both Ibrahim and Nigar. Ibrahim and Hadis decide that Nigar should be married to Rustam. Against his desire, Rustam marries Nigar on Hürrem's instruction but does not keep any intimate relationship with her. Firuz, a new girl in the harem, manages to become the first favorite of the Sultan after Hürrem. Conspired by Hadis, the whole harem tries to save her from Hürrem's revenge. Mihrim Sultan is in love with Yahya, Said Mustafa's closest friend. Mustafa sets out to Manisa, where he serves as a Sankakbi. Suleiman wants to go on a hunting trip, but his daughter doesn't want to come because Firuz is coming and not her mother. Hürrem threatens to kill Firuz. Few years later Hürrem discovers Kada'ur, the secret daughter of Nigar and Ibrahim. Hürrem notifies Ibrahim. Hürrem gives the child to Ibrahim. Fatma Hatun gives birth to a boy. Suleiman goes to Manisa to see Mustafa's son and names the boy Suleiman as his name. Hürrem, Said Mehmed and Mihrama also go with Suleiman. Seeing Suleiman's closeness to Mehmed, Mustafa starts feeling threatened by Mehmed. On a secret meeting with Ibrahim, the Grand Vizier manages to persuade the prince to send Helena away. While trying to kill Firuz on Hürrem's command, Rustam finds out that the tattoo on her neck is connected to the Safavid dynasty. He notifies Hürrem, who informs Suleiman, and the Sultan decides to send her away. Hürrem and Ibrahim continue struggling against each other. Suleiman is getting suspicious about Ibrahim. Suleiman executes Ibrahim and then sends the corpse to Ibrahim's palace. Hadis becomes very sad about the death of her beloved and disowns her brother Suleiman. Together Hadis and Mahidevran plan on killing Hürrem by sending Diana, Mahidevran's servant, to murder Hürrem as a revenge. Since they see Hürrem responsible for the execution of Ibrahim, Sultan decides to stand against Hürrem for her self-interests. Nasya sends Isma, Ibrahim's later daughter, to Ibrahim's family as Nigar. Her mother is now married to Rustam. Diana didn't succeed in killing Hürrem and now Diana is serving Hürrem loyally. Makes Hürrem think that Mustafa is coming to usurp the throne from his father while Suleiman is on a campaign and that Suleiman and her sons are wounded and trapped. Hürrem decided to take her sons, Bayezid and Sahangir, whom stay in the palace, away from Mustafa. But took Hürrem's sons to an old farm. Hürrem discovers this and get there personally to save her sons, but was waiting for her there and told Hürrem that all of this was only a game. Hürrem decided to finish with Mihrama is warned by her mother not to trust anyone except her. Hadis wants to finish with Hürrem because she's seeing doing nothing. Hadis sends someone to tell Hürrem that her daughter Mihrama was in Mormor Palace, but in reality, Mihrama is still in the palace. When Hürrem gets there, Hadis ordered a lady to put something in Hürrem's mouth. Hürrem awake in her room and forgot everything. After some times, Hürrem discovers that she's being witched and she warned Hadis of not playing with her. Gets angry of Hadis of doing things behind her back. Has another plan to get rid of Hürrem. Hürrem speaks with a priest and she recites the Quran to feel well. Suleiman gets another time to a campaign and Bayezid stays in the palace. Angry, Bayezid escaped the palace and goes in the campaign without anyone to know. But Selim saw him and Bayezid returned to the palace. Hürrem decided to rent money from Rukila, a girl who rents money, but the money has been stolen by So, Hürrem was obliged to rent money from another one before the harem's girls make problems. Rukila took orders from to say to Hürrem that Portia Hatun can perhaps help Hürrem. Portia is a Venetian woman and the Sultan was at war with Venice at that time. Hürrem took the money from Portia and then gives back the gold. The Sultan returned from the campaign and sets in Edirne. Took the papers of Hürrem and Portia straight and gets to Edirne to explain everything to Suleiman. But Hürrem sends guards to attack the cars of gives them the fake papers and gives the real ones to Suleiman. Suleiman decides to exile Hürrem in Edirne and then he returns to Topkapı Palace. Orders Rustam Pasha to kill Hürrem Sultan while she's in Edirne, but he refused and decided to stay loyal to Hürrem. Rustam decides that in marrying Mihrama Sultan, his relation with Suleiman can get closer and he is going to enter the Dow. Hürrem accepted but Mihrama refused when she saw her mother in Edirne. A Black Death epidemic breaks out and Ayaz Mehmed Pasha and Mustafa Pasha die from the epidemic. Then, Lutfi Pasha becomes Grand Vizier and is now more powerful. A doctor saves Hürrem by telling the Sultan that the illness comes to Edirne. Hürrem returns in Topkapı. Suleiman decided to marry Hadis to Hüsrev Pasha. She is obliged to accept but she continues living in her old palace. When Suleiman gets to know this, he sends Hadis to the palace of Hüsrev. Mihrama accepts to marry Rustam. Mustafa falls in disgrace from his father because he's doing things without telling his father. Hürrem tells Mihrama her decision of marrying Mihrama with Rustam and Mihrama becomes upset. Hadis, Lutfi and Sa have a plan to get rid of Rustam so he cannot marry Mihrimah. Mahidevran suggests not to kill Rustam but creating rumors that Rustam is very sick. Suleiman is sending a doctor to confirm Rustam's sickness. The doctor finds a louse on Rustam's head and takes it to Istanbul as a sign that Rustam is healthy. Rustam is coming back to Istanbul to marry Mihrimah. Mihrimah gives birth to a girl named Humasa. Sa sends Mihrimah a girl to give milk to Humasa. Lutfi proposes to Suleiman to send Mehmed, Selim and Bazid as according to the traditions. Nagar returns to Istanbul. She meets Sa and she wants to take revenge. Hadis and Sa accept. They help Nagar entering in the palace of Rustam and Mihrimah. At night Nagar should kill Rustam and Hürrem, but, when she sees Mihrimah's daughter, she thinks about her own daughter and takes the child of Rustam and Mihrimah away. Nagar passes baby back to Rustam while a soldier aims to kill her on the order of Sa Sultan, but she commits suicide and the soldier was not able to kill her. Lutfi Pasha continues his crusade against prostitution. When one of the convicts makes fun of him he gets angry and punishes her without the permission of the judge. Sa discovers this and shouts at Lutfi. Lutfi beats and slaps Sa. Sa divorces from him, and he loses his position and is sent far away. Mustafa meets the Austrian ambassador. This leads to a conflict between Suleiman and Mustafa. Suleiman punishes Mustafa by not allowing him to participate in the upcoming campaign, and after the campaign, Mustafa will not return to Manisa but to Amasya. This lead to discussions between Mehmed and Mustafa. A fake letter tells Hürrem that her son Selim is very sick. Hürrem is now going to Konya to see her son, but in reality, he is pretty well and now Hürrem is captured in a secret place. Mihrimah is accusing Sa, Hadis and Mahidevran for this. Suleiman gets very upset. Hadis commits suicide fearing from the Sultan's decision after knowing that she was responsible for Hürrem's disparition. She died knowing that she took vengeance on her husband's death. Suleiman decides to go for war against Charles V, and he achieves a victory, while on the other hands, Malkasoglu Bali Bey finds a lead on Ali Aga, who was Hadis's servant and is responsible for abducting Hürrem, and he went to follow this lead without informing Sultan Suleiman. Mihrimah discovers that her aunt Sa is having a spy in the harem, her daughter's caretaker, and confront her with the fact and threats her to inform her father, Suleiman, if she doesn't leave the city and gives away her money to Hürrem's charity institute. Suleiman's son, Mehmed, gets murdered by his closest sahinbi, Ilyas, who works for Mahidevran, by wounding him and transferring a contiguous disease to him. The news reaches Suleiman, who falls in deep sorrows and feels that everything is falling apart. Season 4. While Suleiman is in his sorrow, Rustam comes to him to tell him that a miracle happened, which is Hürrem came back to the palace safe and sound. Suleiman tells Hürrem after her returning to the palace that he missed her. After some years, Suleiman writes on a paper the name of his sons who will replace Mehmed as Sanjak Bey of Manisa. Bayezid shows love to his family as giving a horse to Mihrimah and a jewel for Hürrem. Mustafa is worried about his father's opinions because he was accompanied to the palace by Janissaries. Mahidevran comes to the palace and argues with Hürrem while they're watching Sahangir's accolade ceremonial. He is quite shy and scared. Hürrem and Rustam are complotting against Mustafa while Mustafa earns the love of public, soldiers and pashas because of his bravery and his intelligence. A slave girl named Cecilia comes to the palace. She is the daughter of a Venetian nobleman, but now she can't stand serving and taking a shower herself. Then, while trying to kill herself, Selim saves her and she falls in love with him. She wants to become a great sultana by going with him at his sanjak. She asks Hürrem but she refuses. Suleiman announces his decision. Selim is chosen for Manisa sanjak. Everyone is surprised. Mahidevran and Mustafa are worried. Everyone thinks throne is the right of Mustafa. Also, Mustafa's concubine who is pregnant is worried about him. Bazid is also angry on the decision and thinks that his father does not love him. Hürrem is searching for a good maid for Selim as Cecilia comes and asks Hürrem again about going with Selim. She tells her that she saw in the stars her destiny by Hürrem's hand. Hürrem accepts and now Cecilia's eyes convert to Islam and is renamed Nurbanu. Hayreddin Pasha tells Mustafa that if he is chased from his father's paradise, he shall build his own. Hürrem sends men to kill Mustafa on his way back to Amasya. His concubine dies with her child from the attack, but Mustafa survives. He is secretly protected by someone. At Makkah, Suleiman often talks with Abu Saud Effendi about the state. Bazid and Salim are always fighting as in Matruk, horse race, and always arguing to become the favorite of their father. Hürrem Sultan is sick. It is shown that she can't have children anymore. She is keeping it secret. Fatma Sultan, Sultan Suleiman's sister, comes to the palace with a special guest, Hadis Sultan's daughter, Hürrem Sultan. Fatma Sultan conspires against Hürrem because Mustafa sent her for this. She sent a new concubine for Suleiman. Suleiman is angry over Rustam for his ineffective management, and public is complaining about his performance. Nurbanu is trying every possible way to become favorite of Selim. Rustam kidnaps Hayr Eden Pasha's daughter and asks him to tell the Sultan that Rustam was wrongly accused for fighting with Ali Aga and Janisarians. Hürrem Sultan and Bayezid fall in love. Their relationship is discovered by Suleiman, and Hürrem is sent to live with Ben Sultan. Mustafa secretly marries Hayr Eden Pasha's daughter Mihranisa. Cecilia is renamed Nurbanu and becomes Sultana and gives birth to a prince which the Sultan names Murad. Valeria, who was Cecilia's servant, is now named Nazan and is Suleiman's concubine. She gives birth to a girl named Razi Sultan. Valeria and Suleiman go to Manisa to visit Selim and name his child. Suleiman saw Selim while Selim is drunk. Suleiman gets very angry and he pushes him away. Nurbanu is given an order by Hürrem to kill Nazanin. Nurbanu Sultan succeeds in her mission and Nazanin is now dead. Bayezid decides to marry Hürrem secretly. Piri Rise, who is the manager of people who seek to protect Mustafa at all costs, plans to assassinate Hürrem, but she survives, and Afif Hatun dies. On Afif's deathbed, she tells Hürrem that the Sultan is extremely ill. The Sultan comes back from the raid and he is extremely ill and faints several times. He is so ill and everyone says he is going to die and Mustafa will rise to the throne, but Suleiman is still alive. Suleiman wonders the name of his oldest son Mustafa. Hürrem tells Rustam this may be his last wish. Hürrem has no choice. She concedes the power of Mustafa and tells Rustam that Suleiman wants Mustafa to come. Rustam calls him, but also he plans an assassination to kill Mustafa. But Mustafa guessed it and got through it. In the meantime, Rustam convinces Selim to calm Janissaries in order to make sure Bayezid will be the next sultan. He knows Selim can't survive through that. Nurbanu learns that and tells it to Hürrem. Then Mustafa arrives to the palace. Hürrem requests Mustafa to save Selim because she knows only Mustafa can stop and command soldiers except for Suleiman. Mustafa saves Selim and returns to the palace with Selim. But Hürrem fears the power and prestige of Mustafa and she wants him to be executed. Hürrem, with help of Rustam and Mihranisa, sends a fake letter to the Iranian Shah Tahmasp. In the letter she mentions about ruling the empire and getting on throne while disposing of Suleiman. Suleiman believes that Mustafa has betrayed him when he sees Mustafa's seal on the letter. In year 1553, in Konya, Sultan Suleiman orders Mustafa's execution. As soon as Mustafa enters Sultan's tent, executioners come and grab him. Many people attempts to kill him and Mustafa finally dies. Mustafa's only son Mehmet is also killed on the order of the Sultan. The Janissaries mourn over Mustafa's body and vow to avenge his death by taking Rustam's life. The Sultan fires Rustam of his post because he is suspicious about Rustam, and the Janissaries finally are at peace. Suleiman mourns at the loss of his son Mustafa, and begins to question his decision of killing. Sahangir dies of heartbreak after his brother's death. Mahidevran and Mihranisa arrive at Topkapi shortly. Soon after, Mustafa's wife Mihranisa tells Hürrem that my winter is over but yours has just started, and then commits suicide by slitting her throat in front of everyone in the harem. Mahidevran along with Nergis Sultan and Fatah travel to Bursa, where Mahidevran spends all her allowance to build Mustafa's tomb. Fatma Sultan's husband Kara Ahmed Pasha becomes the next Grand Vizier, but soon after he is executed by the Sultan for intriguing against Bayezid by sending money to the group of rebels supporting the fake Mustafa. Fatma plans to kill Hürrem, but the Sultan saves her at the right time and Fatma gets kicked out of Topkapı Palace forever. Hürrem and Nurbanu have a fight and Nurbanu kills Hürrem. Hürrem finds out but Nurbanu blackmails her and gets away with it. However, Nurbanu declare open war against Hürrem after this. Hürrem tries to kill Nurbanu but did not success. Bayezid and Suleiman return to their Sanjaks and a strange girl named Difna enters Bayezid's harem and catches his attention, becoming his favorite hatun. Difna, on the order of Nurbanu, tries to poison Bayezid but she is caught by Atmaka and it is revealed that she is pregnant, and she did all this on the order of Nurbanu as she has Difna's sister as a captive. Bayezid gets angry and in the rage of anger he writes a letter to the Sultan explaining him Suleiman's actions and tells him that he is going to attack Suleiman's palace, but the letter does not reach Suleiman. Meanwhile, Hürrem is traveling to Manisa and on her way she feels sick and it is revealed that she has an illness which has no cure and that her death is near. Bayezid and Suleiman declare open war against each other. Bayezid with many Janissary soldiers sets out for Manisa to take Suleiman into the account for all what he has done. Bayezid reaches Manisa and they both just start to fight that Hürrem arrives and stops them. Hürrem says that she would prefer Bayezid to be the next sultan, with Mihrama and Rustam's support, but later decides she cannot choose between her sons. Hürrem visited Mahidevran in Bursa. They forgive each other. Then with help of Sumbul, she found grave of Ibrahim. She thanked him for everything. Hürrem dies in arms of her beloved husband. After her death Suleiman falls into deep depression. Mihrama and Rustam begin to work on Bayezid's succession. Suleiman blackmails Rustam because Rustam had an affair with another woman, Gracha and Rustam switches sides. Mihrama falls in love with a man named Pedro. Bayezid and Suleiman have a huge war and Suleiman provides Suleiman with 5,000 Janissary soldiers and supports him. Bayezid and his children are killed. Rustam is killed by Atmaka with the support of Mihrama Sultan and Bayezid, but the reason of his death was kept secret and Mihrama clarified that Rustam died in his sleep since he was sick. The next Grand Vizier is Semizali Pasha. Difna commits suicide and kills her son so Nurbanu cannot have the satisfaction of killing her. Suleiman goes to war and wins the battle. Meanwhile, Suleiman is growing older and more depressed with guilt. Mihrama hates him and calls him a brother murderer. Mihrama secretly plots to have Suleiman's son succeed him, and builds him up. Back at the camp, Suleiman, after winning the war, knows he is going to die. He thinks of Pargalı Ibrahim and dies. Suleiman becomes the next sultan. The show generated controversy and complaints from some viewers, for what they referred to as a disrespectful, indecent and hedonistic portrayal of the historical sultan. Turkey's Radio and Television Supreme Council, known as RTÜK, claimed they had received over 70,000 complaints about the show and warned Show TV to publicly apologize for wrongly exposing the privacy of a historical person. The Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan condemned the show as an effort to show our history in a negative light to the younger generations. An MP for the governing Justice and Development Party, Oktay Seril, went further, threatening to outlaw the misrepresentation of historical figures in shows such as Muhteşem Yüzyıl. Small groups of Islamists and nationalists protested the studio, but the show remains successful with consistently high ratings. Elif Batuman wrote in The New Yorker, "On the surface, Magnificent Century looks like a quintessential product of the Erdogan years. Thanks to Erdogan's economic policies, Turkey has a thriving television industry, capable of staging elaborate period dramas, and a prosperous family-oriented middle class of observant Muslims eager to watch their own values reflected in a historical imperial setting, and, much as Erdogan's foreign policy has promoted relations with former Ottoman lands, the show has conquered large audiences in Balkan, Caucasian, and Arab countries not known for their fond memory of Ottoman rule." Broadcast to more than 200 million viewers in 52 countries, Magnificent Century has accomplished one of Erdogan's main goals, making a powerful, non-secularist, globally involved version of Turkey both plausible and appealing, and yet Erdogan is not a fan. In late 2012, at the opening of a provincial airport, he took a moment to condemn the show's depiction of Suleiman, as well as its directors and broadcasters. hinting at severe judicial repercussions. International popularity. Muhteşem Yüzyıl is reported to have an international audience of 200 million viewers. A Nielsen media research market study found out that it is the most watched TV show in Bosnia and Herzegovina in 2013 and the fourth most successful show in Serbia. The show is part of an ongoing revival of Turkish culture in the Balkans through imported TV shows from Turkey, such as Oil Burgezer's Zamanki, As Time Goes By, #1 TV show in Macedonia, or Fatma Gül on Susuni. What is Fatma Gül's Fault, which was top-ranked TV show in Kosovo 2012. Serbian sociologist Ratko Bozovic explains the popularity by pointing at the traditional, patriarchal values of the Turkish shows, and the many cultural and linguistic similarities between Turkey and the Balkan countries. The mentality depicted in those shows has to do with a traditional understanding of morality that people in Serbia remember at some level. According to him, all Balkan countries have seen dramatic changes in terms of family life, and the Turkish shows help them recall value systems that now seem lost. In Pakistan, the show is called Mera Sultan, meaning My Emperor, airing on George Kahani. George Kahani claims that it is the channel's most popular citation needed, and continues to receive highest ratings, along with other Turkish series like Ask Memnu and Fatma Gül on Susuni. Although many people did not appreciate the new Hürrem, the show is still popular in Pakistan. In Greece, the series has become quite popular. It has become so popular that Bishop Anthimos of Thessaloniki and the Golden Dawn Party condemned the show and urged Greeks not to watch it. No one should watch Muhteşem Yüzyıl, the Magnificent Century, Anthimos said. He added, by watching the Turkish series we are telling them we have surrendered. In Republic of Macedonia, Turkish series have become so popular, that the Macedonian parliament has moved to ban Turkish soaps to reduce the Turkish impact on Macedonian society. Turkish series will gradually be removed and replaced by national programs, according to a 2012 bill.